Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. Today I have another LPVO for you. This one's from Gideon Optics. It's their first LPVO in their series of now 2 LPVOs, both named the Guardian somehow. But this is a second focal plane, 1:10, 34mm budget LPVO from Gideon, the Guardian. Let's get into it. All right, for full transparency, Gideon did send this scope out to me. I do have a relationship with Gideon. They've sent me a number of optics. I've bought a couple of my own, and I have an affiliation with them where I do get a small kickback if you purchase through any links that I give you. So, in full transparency, that relationship does exist. However, that never affects my reviews, it never affects my biases or anything like that, and it certainly does not affect how this thing works. We are going to be doing the full drop tests and accuracy tests and all that. So those tests don't lie, no matter how much you think I might be, just because I have a relationship with them. So let's get into all of that. Again, this was Gideon's first kind of foray into LPVOs. It's a 1:10 by 34mm LPVO, second focal plane. Now, I am not a big fan of second focal plane, but the way this reticle is set up, I actually rather like it. And I'm going to get into the reticle here in a second. A few other things about it first. So it does have a 122-foot field of view at 100 yards, which I think is absolutely amazing. That is a very, very, very good field of view at 100 yards. And the exit pupil goes from 2.5 to 8.8, depending on your setting, being 1 or 10. At 8.8, that's roughly 2.5 to 3 times your human eye pupil. So you get very, very good eye box. It's very easy to get a good view through the scope at 1x. And then at 2.5, that's right around the size of your normal pupil, your human pupil. So it is not super difficult to get behind it on 10x, which is sort of a departure of 10x 1:10 scopes, where I've had other 1:8 and even 1:10 that on the high setting, you have to be very, very deliberate, almost static, and get really centered behind the optic at 10x. This one at 10x, I can get behind it very easily. I don't have to work on that centering. So I do like that about this scope. Now, as far as glass clarity is pretty good. It's not 100%. It is a budget scope. It's not 100%. And as I get to the outer edges of the glass, it gets blurry. There's no fisheye to speak of, but the outer, probably, in my view at 1x, the outer 1/8 inch of view gets kind of blurry on this scope, but is otherwise very usable and pretty darn clear and sharp. As far as sharp goes, that reticle, I really like the reticle. So the reticle has a drop-down design for ranging. It has a chevron in the center and a segmented circle around the chevron, which I think is a phenomenal reticle idea. I like circles because circles make your eye focus to the center, and then chevrons having an infinite aiming point being the very point of the triangle, or chevron in this case, versus a dot. And this is sort of where I've traditionally not much liked second focal plane scopes, because they'll have a crosshair or dot, and in second focal plane, that tends to be fairly heavy. And you have that same weight, that same line weight or dot weight in the entire range of magnification. Whereas first focal plane, generally the dot or the chevron or the crosshairs or whatever are finer at 1x and They get bigger as you go through the magnification range, and then usually at 10x, it's very usable, still a nice, sharp, crisp, small aiming point. So for eye relief, this has roughly a 3.5-inch eye relief. And I mean, I have it, of course, placed well with my stock placement and all that, that as soon as I come up on 1x, I have a full view, and then on 10x, I still have a full view right there. Now, if I move just a little bit, I get scope shadow. Again, at 2.5 millimeter exit pupil on 10x, that is right about the human pupil size. Therefore, side-to-side motion, you're going to get, some scope shadow. On 1x, I have quite a bit of room before I get any considerable scope shadow. Now, as I said, this does have a 34 millimeter tube, which means it does have pretty darn good light transmission and color transmission. There is more tube, more glass to take in more light to give you a little bit clearer and nicer picture. Again, there is some fuzziness, some blurriness around the very edge, but 7/8 of the viewing window is very, very clear. Now, as far as the body material, I don't know. I believe it's 6061, as well as the mount is 6061. I do know that the mount's 6061 aluminum. I think the body of the scope is as well. Why is that metric important? So 6061 is a softer aluminum versus 7075, which we see in generally more expensive optics. However, there's positives and negatives to that. 6061 being softer tends to bend, and you're able to re-zero and usually keep rolling if your scope gets like a sharp impact or something. 7075 being more brittle, harder but more brittle. If it breaks, which it's more likely to do rather than bend, then you can't re-zero. Your mount's broken or something like that. So it's a give and take both ways. But as far as price goes, when you get into the budget realm of optics, 6061 is pretty common. Now, it does have 11 illumination settings on one side of it without an off position between each one. It rolls through from 0 to 11, but you can roll from 11 to 1. So that means that you don't have to roll all the way through it to get to 11. You can just go from 0 to 11. And honestly, as far as LPVOs go, this is actually a reasonably usable brightness, even in the bright sun of the Arizona desert. It's not fire bright, it's not red dot bright, but as far as an etched reticle LPVO goes, this is fairly bright. And that leads us to the turrets. These are half MOA clicks. It is a lift up, roll around, push back down design. I have it zeroed right now. Let me see, I'm on 4.5, so I can, right? You can hear that. Very audible, very tactile, very nice clicks, half MOA clicks with a total of 140 MOA adjustment. All right, so I have this zeroed at 50 yards right now, have it mounted in my Bog Hunt Death Grip tripod here, and the magazines are brought to you by KCI USA. They have supplied the magazines for this video. So 5 rounds of Igman 223 55 grain. We're going to do 5 shots, drop test, 5 shots. All right, let's take this out of here. Gun is clear. Step back to where hopefully you can see me dropping this. I don't want to, there's a bunch of rocks. There's a bunch of rocks out here. So this is really rocky ground. This is not a place where I normally do this. So each side and top. Yeah, that landed right on it. Move my tripod a little bit, or my bipod a little bit. Okay. Illumination still works. And again, 5 more shots of Igman 223 out of the KCI mag. All right, let's go check that out. All right, so as you can see here, it clearly did not hold 0. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's my original group with no other hits on here. So let's go back to the tripod, load up a couple more rounds. I'm gonna like aim here, here, and here, and here, and see if I get any hits on it so we know how much it shifted. All right, just checking to make sure that this wasn't loose. If it is, I can't feel it. Everything's been torqued to what I'm gonna call common specs, because Gideon doesn't offer the torque specs in their book. So I sort of guessed. I went with 30 inch-pounds on the mount, and then it was either 18 or 20 inch-pounds on the caps. So this will be bottom center. This will be center of the neck. Oh, I found it. It shifted like 2 feet high. I noticed there, I'm going to take you down there in a second, but I noticed a hole in the target on my way up to the neck, left from the bottom center. So I'm going to do bottom center a couple more times. Oh, definitely, yeah. Yeah. All right, let's go down, check it out. All right, so I was aiming here. That was my first shot. I noticed that on my way up to shoot here. The second shot was here, which must have landed somewhere in Phoenix or something. But then I came back down here, and those are the next 3. So it shifted 18 inches, almost straight down, a little bit to the right, but almost straight down. So oftentimes when a scope or red dot loses 0 during testing, during the destructive testing, unless there's something obviously broken, I never know. It's hard to tell if it's the tube that bent or a mount that bent. In this case, it was absolutely 100% the mount bending. Now, if you can't see it from where it's at, I will get a close-up picture of that. But it does look like the mount bent down every bit of 1/8 of an inch at the very nose of it. Again, this is one of those things I said about 6061. I can, as long as I'm not going to be using this for like duty, super hard use, high impact use, I can re-zero this and the scope, as long as I didn't bend it out of its adjustment range, still usable. I sort of saw it coming, just because 6061 aluminum, this kind of stuff tends to happen. But through normal function and use of the last about 800 rounds, this has never lost 0 and has done quite well. So take that for what it's worth. The reason I do these destructive tests is for you to know what it will take from easy use to the high impact dynamic use. All right, so for the YouTube sensors, I'm about to talk about price, it's just to, I'm not selling anything, it's just to inform the viewer so they can make the best decision possible if they decide to go out and buy one. I'm not selling anything on this channel. I don't sell any regulated goods and so on and so on. This does not break guidelines. The optic alone comes in at $399, $400. And I think the optic, for a second focal plane optic, in my opinion, is actually quite good. I still consider that, $400 is still in that budget range. The mount, I would probably personally skip the mount, get a better 34 millimeter 70-75 mount, and I think even then you can still have on the lower end of the price point and have a very solid setup with pretty good or really good glass, with the exception of that outer edge. Very usable and a nice reticle, in my opinion. Now, if you are interested in the entire Gideon setup, the mount is, I believe it's right at $40 for the mount additionally on top of the scope. So it's about a $440, $450 package altogether. All right, and that's all I got for you today. Thank you to Gideon Optics for sending that out and all the rest of the stuff. I really do like Gideon Company. Thank you to KCI USA for supplying the magazines, and I will leave a link to everything that I've used today down below so you can check all that stuff out for yourself. There's other ways to support the channel down there as well, including my Instagram and X or Twitter or whatever the fuck you want to call it, and other social medias. You can also become a member of the channel, which is awesome. I appreciate it if you do. It's very inexpensive, and you can get free previews or video previews and other members only unboxings and posts and things like that. So I appreciate everybody out there watching. Again, thank you to Gideon, and we'll talk to you guys later.